I am officially bulletproofed. Yes, that's why my skin is glowing and I'm looking ripped and jacked. It's because every morning I take my mycotoxin-free bulletproof coffee and mix it up with MCT oil and grass-fed butter. Why, do you ask? Well, it does a lot of things. It replaces my meal for the morning, and it gets my brain all the right nutrients they need. Those oils, that fat, and then I don't eat until 1 or 2 o'clock. So it's not really just coffee, it's turning into a lifestyle. You're no stranger to controversy for your whole career, and we've had one of, I guess we wouldn't call him a colleague, but a peer, Rupert Sheldrake, on in the past, and we had a great discussion with him, and I know it's probably been discussed, but I kind of wanted to know what the current state was between yourselves and the TED Talk people. Has the issue kind of been dealt with and squashed, or is there still unfinished business between the two of you? I know that they had kind of relegated your talks to a kind of the bad behavior
Rupert
corner.
calls it the naughty corner.
The naughty corner.
On the TED website, yeah.
Right, and they had called it pseudo-archaeology, pseudo-science, which you've been hearing probably most of your career.
Yeah.
And then they put it to the corner, and then...
there's some very intelligent people involved in the running of TED, but...
They did you a big favor in a
Well,
way.
I have to say the way that they handled this whole operation was just really stupid.
Can you break it down for people that aren't totally familiar?
Well, first of all, it was clear that they were reacting to me and to Rupert not on the basis of what we actually said in our talks, but on preconceptions that they had about us as individuals. See, with TEDx, the decision to put on the event is taken at a local level. It's not taken by TED Central. TED Central are approached by local conference organizers all around the world, thousands and thousands of them, who say we'd like to organize a conference around this subject. In our case, the subject was challenging existing paradigms, as a matter of fact. And TED will then give them a license to put on what is called a TEDx conference, which is not going to be like the grand TED conferences with huge numbers of attendees, but might have 200-300 attendees and a dozen speakers or so, run for a day. So TED do not vet the contents of the program at the outset. All the talks are put up on the TEDx YouTube channel. Then what happened was my talk was up there, Rupert's talk was up there, and so were the talks of about 10 other people who spoke at TEDx Whitechapel in January 2013. But then what happened was our talks began to attract attention. Firstly, my talk had 132,000 views on their YouTube channel within about 2 to 3 weeks of being put up. Rupert's talk got huge numbers of views as well. And scientists who are connected to TED went to TED and protested, how can you give a stage to these individuals? Rupert's talk was called The Science Delusion. Hancock's talk is called The War on Consciousness, and Hancock is known to be a pseudoscientist because he challenges the existing model of history. How can you put these talks up on your channel at all? And TED apparently got frightened. So when they took the talks down, they issued a statement, and every single thing that they said about my talk in their statement, and the same is true of Rupert's talk, everything they said about my talk in their statement turned out to be false. I had not said that. They said, for example, that Hancock says that by drinking ayahuasca, you may gain direct contact with an ancient mother culture. Nowhere in my talk do I say that. I don't say it anywhere. But they had a preconception that I was the kind of person who might say that. So rather than actually sitting down and listening, it's only 18 minutes, and listening carefully to the talk, they bounced out with their preconceptions, stated them as facts, and then had to do a humiliating about turn when they were unable to substantiate a single thing that they had said about my talk or about Rupert's talk. End result, on the naughty corner of the TED website, their statements are still there, but they're now all crossed out. And underneath them, in full, are published the rebuttals that Rupert and I made. And that was the agreement we made with TED, that they would have to publish our rebuttals, and they would have to cross out their false and unsubstantiable statements, which they did do. But what they would not do is reinstall our talks on their YouTube channel, which of course is their right. I mean, they're the broadcaster. They can decide what they want to host and what they don't want to host, but they do keep the talks there online in the naughty corner of their website. Now, there was a huge furore around this, an enormous reaction on the internet. The internet does not like censorship.
No.
The spirit of the internet is freedom of information, and the whiff of censorship that surrounded this, that TED actually felt that these talks were too dangerous to be seen by adult rational people out there, was very annoying to a lot of adult rational people. Felt that TED had gone too far, that this was a paternalistic act of ideological censorship, and it resulted in a huge outcry on the internet. The talks were re-uploaded onto dozens of independent YouTube channels, where they then proceeded to attract...
It backfired massively, right?
It backfired massively on TED. I mean, if their objective, was to... keep us quiet, then they should have taken a completely different strategy from the strategy they took.
It makes them look very much part of the mainstream conspiracy, right?
It makes them look part of the mainstream conspiracy, and this is I think, not something that TED had thought through, because their brand, if you like, is about free thinking and challenging ideas.
Changing the paradigm, or whatever the name of the conference was, what do they expect? If they really want to bring people in that are going to do that.
The fundamental issue, it rapidly became clear, was, and what was the common point between my talk and Rupert's talk, and these two talks were otherwise very different. The fundamental issue was that we are both open to the possibility that consciousness may not be localized to the brain, that the brain may be a vehicle for consciousness, that it may be a transceiver of consciousness rather than a generator of consciousness. And that idea of the non-locality of consciousness, which is being taken very seriously by leading researchers in consciousness studies at the moment, turns out bumps up against a fundamental dogma of the small group of scientists who advise TED, because all of those scientists define themselves as materialists.
But it's what we
and a materialist is not somebody who loves material things. It's somebody who believes that everything may be reduced to matter, including consciousness.
But it's what